welcome. Thank you for being here today. My name is Sandy Skolachenko, and since you're here, you have officially made it to the training session about our new web-based local government solid waste and materials management annual report. Here at our team, a lot of times we like to shorten the name of that report, so sometimes we refer to it as the Local Government Annual Report, or LGAR or LGAR. So if you hear us slip up and refer to it as that, we're all talking about the same thing here. So I want to start with a little bit of housekeeping and kind of talk you through some of the buttons on the control panel that you should see on your screen. So Carol, do you have that you can share on your screen?
Yes. Or here we go. Can you see it, Sandy?
I still see your web browser.
How about now?
Nope, just web browser.
Sorry.
I can just talk through the important buttons. And if you can get it pulled up, then we'll point to it. Anyway, you should have a orange rectangle button with a little arrow that will allow you, there it is, to expand and collapse your control panel. Below that is your mute and unmute button, which I should have reminded myself about before I started talking. Everybody is muted right now because we have that power. But at the end of this session, we will do a question and answer portion. And if you want to ask a question verbally, we'll let you unmute yourself and ask your question that way. Since we do have quite a few people on the line, we'll ask that you use that raised hand button so we know you want to ask a question, and then I can acknowledge you and unmute just you so that you can ask your question without interruptions or unintended background noise. We also have that box below is a questions box. You may need to click the white arrow beside the word question in the gray bar to expand it, but you can type your questions into that box, and we encourage you to type questions anytime throughout the training. Once we get through the presentation part, we will read aloud the questions and answer them. And if you have a question that's super specific to your community or your reporting process, we may not read it aloud, but we'll be sure to follow up with you after the training and make sure that we answer it. So now I want to quickly introduce the three of us on the screen. And I saw somebody already did ask a question, will this be recorded? And yes, it is being recorded. And by the end of this week, we hope to share out that link if you have colleagues who didn't make it or anyone else who registered and couldn't be here today. So we'll share that. So I'm Sandy, as I said. We all work for the recycling team at NCDEQ. Specifically, we work for a non-regulatory division, the Division of Environmental Assistance and Customer Service, or DEACS, and we are tasked with managing this reporting process every year, lucky us, which is, you'll hear us say a few times, a requirement for all local governments to do this report by North Carolina General Statute. So also on the screen, we have Carol Abkin. You'll hear from her in just a minute. She works on our local government assistance team. And also with us today, we have Wendy Worley. She's our section chief, and she oversees our recycling program as a whole. So I'm going to let Wendy make a few introductory remarks. And after that, Carol, you can take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Sandy said, my name is Wendy Worley, for those of you who don't know me, and I do manage the recycling team here in DEACS. We are the Recycling and Materials Management section, and we are completely non-regulatory. We do have this reporting requirement responsibility through the general statutes, though, and this, I just want to share with you all, we know it is a report that takes time on your part to fill out and complete each year, and I want to share with you first and foremost how grateful we are that you are able to participate in this reporting process. It is obviously a requirement by state law, but it is also a very, very valuable tool that we at the state level are able to utilize, but also provides really important data all across the state and the nation to really document our recovery efforts, where we might need improvements. It allows us to benchmark programs and recovery rates. It is very important piece of data that we can also use for recycling business development. As folks are looking to locate here in North Carolina, we can share with them the data collected from these reports to illustrate the commitment to recycling all across and all the hard work that you all do in diverting those materials across the state. So want to just share with you how grateful we are for you to report each year. With this new process being online, our hope is that it becomes easier to comply with that law, and that this online reporting system is easier. I know Sandy and Carol have been working very hard to make this as painless as possible from a user standpoint. So we're going to try to share with you some of the tools that are in place to allow you to report online and make this process a little bit easier for you. So we welcome you to this meeting, want to answer any questions that you have. And again, just thank you for really participating in this very important piece of our responsibility.
Thanks, Wendy. Once again, can everyone see the correct screen, which is the form?
Yes.
Okay, great. So now I'm going to go through page by page and give a brief overview of our new web-based report. This here is the instruction page, which has a lot of the information that I'll be going over today. And you can also toggle at the top between the different sections of the form. But, sorry, let me pull y'all back up. Okay, but here at the top, we briefly go through the requirements for this form. And there is a breakdown of the different sections. You can also go to this link at the bottom to pull up previous versions of or past reports that y'all have already turned in. And you can reference these as you do your report this year. You can also go to our page with frequently asked questions about the report, which also has a lot of the information that I'll go through today. And you can also download a blank PDF of the report that you can use when you're gathering your data. And you can make notes and not have to worry about putting everything in the form as you're first beginning to compile information. And throughout this process, let's see, trying to see y'all. I'm gonna, sorry, move everyone over there. Throughout this process, you click next to get to the next page of the report. Then you come to the general information page where you pick your name. I'll be Aberdeen today. And don't worry, Aberdeen, we will get rid of this report when I submit it. Put in my email so I can send it to myself. And one of the cool things about this version is that it has something called skip logic, where as you fill out questions of the report, if you click yes, it will show different questions with more details about the question that you've chosen. But if you click no, you don't have to see those questions. And this is where it differs from past reports, where in the PDF you'd have to see everything, whether or not you had that question or whether you had any information. But now you can just click yes and fill out the details as you go through. And that applies to questions throughout the report. One important question that we get a lot is, if you don't provide or contract for any solid waste services, do you still have to fill out the report? The answer is yes, all local governments must submit this report. And if you click yes, you'll be brought to the next sections of the report. But if you click no, then you'll be taken to the end of the report, which is a quick question about disaster preparedness plans. But for our purposes now, I'm going to say that we do manage, provide, or contract for solid waste services, being garbage disposal or solid waste, recycling, mulching, or compost programs. Then we'll click next and answer some questions in part 1 about government facility waste reduction programs. I'll say yes to these. Next, we have a section about public waste reduction and recycling programs, whether you have a backyard composting program, and you see the skip logic here where it brings up different questions about the different types of backyard compost activities you may have. And further, you can click through and there'll be questions, for example, about the number of bins distributed. And throughout this, I'm just going to click so you can see some of the next questions that pop up when you click yes, but I won't walk through every single one. Say, does your local government have a waste exchange or reuse program? We'll say yes, and we'll get another question. And then we come to the section about public recycling services. You can say that you did operate or contract for a recycling program. Another question is, or another option is whether your local government operated or contracted for a recycling program, or did not operate or contract for a recycling program, but did participate in a different recycling program sponsored by another local government. An example of this is if you're a municipality and you don't provide, let's say, curbside recycling service, but your county provides curbside recycling service for your residents. In that case, you'd say yes to this question. For example, Orange County provides curbside recycling for the town of Hillsborough, so they would say yes here, and then say which government you partnered with. And if you answer that, it would skip you to the end, but now we're going to say that we did operate or contract for our own recycling program, and that brings you to the curbside recycling section. If you say yes, you get a lot more questions about your program. If you say no, you can just go on to the next section. A new thing about our web-based form is that we have something called tooltips, where, for example, if you see this little question mark, it will bring up a more detailed definition of the information that we're asking about. So if you have a private contractor who collects your curbside recycling, you can click on this little question mark and it'll bring up the definition of what we mean by private contractor or franchised hauler, which also includes some more information about the questions below. And for this purpose, let's say that we have a private contractor, we give the name, we give the number of households in your jurisdiction, the number of households who are eligible to participate in the curbside program versus the number of households that do participate in the program. We would ask about residential or commercial collection, what sectors are served by your program, and then if you click yes to commercial or industrial, we'll ask you for the number of accounts that you served. We'll ask about collection frequency, about the number of the kind of containers used, and whether residents either sign up or are automatically included in curbside service. Then we'll come to the drop-off section. If you have a drop-off recycling program, we ask many of the same kinds of questions about who collected the recyclable materials for your program and whether it was collected source separated or commingled or dual stream, which are also questions that we have in the above section for curbside. Then we ask about electronics recycling. If you have electronics recycling program, what kind of program it was, whether residences or businesses were eligible to participate, and if you receive any electronics management funds. And then we have another section about other public recycling programs, which what we mean by this is whether it's a curbside or a drop-off program, and if it's not either of those two, then we call that an other recycling program. One of these is multifamily, which you can go to the tooltips here and see that we define multifamily property as being a housing structure that includes about 5 or more dwelling units. So if you provide recycling services to those properties other than curbside or drop-off programs, we'd ask you what kind of collection you use, whether carts or dumpsters for your multifamily properties, the number of accounts served, and the number of units served. We also ask if you operate commercial or industrial programs. And if your local government provides recycling to any ABC permit holders, if you have a construction and demolition program and what kind of materials, if you have any away from home programs like public parks or pedestrian recycling, and if you, for example, have a food waste drop-off or curbside food waste collection, then we have a skip logic question that will ask you if it's a permanent program or a pilot. And then we'd like to know which compost facility you take your food waste to for processing, if that's the case. Then we click next, and then we ask about recycling tonnages from your public programs. This is a new section that we think will be easier to report your recycling tons in a variety of ways. One moment. So we provide options for you to provide your curbside or your recycling tonnage either commingled or as source separated. And we have two different ways that you can report commingled tonnage. First, as many local governments do, you can provide one figure for your commingled tonnage that's then taken to a MRF or a materials recovery facility. Let's say that you have 400 tons of commingled recycling that was either collected by a hauler or by your local government and then taken to a MRF. We'll ask you to report which kinds of recyclables are included in that tonnage. So let's say you have aluminum cans, steel cans, glass bottles and jars, plastics number 1 and 2, some dairy tubs, cardboard, newspaper, office paper, and mixed paper. So if you have commingled, we do ask that you tell us everything that you collect in your program. And then we ask you to identify the MRF that you bring your material to. For example, say Pratt. We'll ask if you have a formal contract, when it expires, and if you know your contamination level. And if so, what your inbound contamination percentage is. And then we also ask that if you don't know which MRF your community uses, because you contract with a hauler that takes care of that material for you, we do ask that you ask your hauler which materials recovery facility they use, because that's really useful information for us to know all across the state. There's also another way for you to report commingled recycling tonnage, which is, of course, if all household materials are collected together. Some local governments received detailed breakdowns of their individual materials tonnages from their MRFs. And if you receive that kind of information, we would like to know it. If that's the case, please click yes, that you collect commingled recycling, but can report it separately. In that case, we'll still ask you to provide the information about your MRF, but then you can use the separated recycling tonnage section to report your tons separately. So let's say you've got glass, different kinds of plastic. I'm not going to fill out everything here. And then you can give us a more detailed breakdown. And that is also the case if you are a local government that only collects source separated material. In that case, you wouldn't say anything for the commingled recycling tonnage section because you collect and market that material yourself. In that case, we ask that you provide your tonnage separately. I'll say that this is a local government who has only a drop-off program. And of course, these are entirely made up numbers right now. We have tooltips here that also describe the different kinds of tons that go in each column. For example, there's curbside programs, drop-off programs, or what we call other tons. In this case, it's recycling from schools, any multifamily recycling tons, away from home tonnage, commercial or ABC accounts. And this is all if you track that tonnage separately from your normal curbside or drop-off programs. So for example, I'll say that this is some school recycling tonnage provided here. You also have the option to combine these two methods. So let's say that you have commingled curbside collection. And you don't receive a detailed breakdown from your MRF. And you also have a drop-off location. And you have school recycling where the tonnage is reported separately. But you also collect cardboard separately and can track those tons. So you can also provide information in the source separated section. Next, no matter how you collect your household recyclables, we're going to ask if you collect other recycling tonnage, such as metals, scrap metals, pallets, clean wood, food waste, TVs, computer equipment, and textiles. So you can enter that here. And also if you collect construction or demolition material, such as, I will ask you to specify what it is, such as concrete, and the amount of tons that you collect. And then all of your tonnages will automatically total down here. And so that is our new tonnage section. In this next section, we ask if you have recycling tonnage as a result of a policy or ordinance. For example, if you have a cardboard disposal ban that results in private cardboard recycling, and you can track it. And then we'll ask you to describe the mechanism that allows for that policy or ordinance. And next we have our specialty waste collection section. One moment. Doing a lot of talking here. Our specialty waste collection used to be called special waste, but we actually lightly rebranded this because special waste is actually a class of waste by the EPA that has to do with mining. So we did a soft rebrand to specialty waste. And specialty waste is what we call these materials collected here. And they're often collected at convenience centers, transfer stations, and landfills. One thing new about this section is that we're going to ask you to convert everything to pounds. So if you collect used motor oil, we'll ask you to provide the number of sites and give the pounds of motor oil that you collected. We have the conversion factors down here. For example, 1 gallon of used motor oil is 7.4 pounds. So for example, let's say that you collected 1,000 gallons of used motor oil. You would just multiply that number by 7.4 and report 7,500 pounds of that material. And one moment. Sandy, I am going to give this to you really quickly, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sandy, do you think you could take over for a second?
Yeah. Can you see my internet browser now? Can you see my screen, Carol?
Yes, I can see your screen.
And it is the report?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let me pick back up at hazardous waste. Here we are. Okay, so this is our household hazardous waste section. And if you say yes, you operated an HHW facility, you'll see most of the questions are similar to the previous report. And similarly, we have some skip logic to ask you some follow-up questions when you indicate yes. The next section of the report is our yard waste section. And so if you don't have any yard waste program, you'll be able to skip straight on to the next. If you do, we'll ask you some specific questions about your program. One new quick question we added is how, if you collect yard waste curbside, we ask that you tell us who collects it, local government employees, a private contractor, or if anyone does this through franchise, which we're not aware of anyone that does, but you might surprise us, you can select franchise hauler here. Similar to the specialty waste, we are changing the way we ask you to report yard waste just a little bit. Previously, we had asked you to report in tons or cubic yards, but now we're asking that you please report all of your yard waste in tons. If you have information in cubic yards, we've given you a conversion factor. So 1 cubic yard is equal to 0.2 tons of yard waste. So if you collected 2,000 cubic yards of yard waste, you'd multiply it by 0.2 and you'd get 1 ton. I'm sorry, trying to do this math in my head. But use the conversion factors, and of course, if you have questions, feel free to contact us. The next section is about solid waste or garbage collection services. These are very similar questions to reports from previous years. You'll notice that instead of the table, the tabular format that we used to have, we've got drop-down options for you to select to answer these questions. So first, we ask who collects solid waste from each of these sectors, residential, commercial, and industrial. And so you can select the appropriate answer. And we have an opportunity for you to select a secondary answer if it's applicable. So let's say the primary way that your residents dispose of their solid waste is by taking it to a convenience center, which is hauled by local government employees. So you would say local government employees pick up solid waste from the convenience center. But an example of a secondary method would be if there's an opportunity for residents to subscribe with a private hauler in the county. So you might say a secondary way of solid waste collection is by contract once a week at everyone's household. So you'll do the same for commercial and industrial. If you collected curbside solid waste in your jurisdiction, you'll get some follow-up questions here to answer. And for municipalities, if you have a white goods collection, we just want you to let us know, were the white goods delivered to the county for recycling? If so, please do not put any tons in the tonnage table on Part 2B for white goods. Those should be reported in the county's report. So we want to try to avoid any double counting there. So and that goes for any other materials. If you take recycling to the county, if you take cardboard to the county as a municipality, the general way we handle that is we allow the county to report it in their total numbers so that we're not counting that material twice. The next section is about education. Does your local government have an education program to inform residents about solid waste or recycling? If you answer yes, we've got some follow-up questions.
Hey, and this sorry about that. I can pop back in here.
Okay. Do you want me to give you screen sharing back?
Yes, please.
Okay. Great, because this is your section. Give me just a second. Okay, you should be able to share now.
All right, y'all see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then we come to what we call the full cost accounting section. We'd like to know if your local government operates an enterprise fund, and we give a definition over to the right. And then we'd like to know if you receive solid waste disposal tax distributions, and if so, what you do with them. And then we ask about what funding sources your local government uses to fund solid waste and recycling services. So for example, if you have both per household charges and you use property taxes to fund solid waste activities. And let's say that you also receive tire tax distributions and white goods tax distributions. If you have per household charges for solid waste and recycling, we ask that you provide both the amount of the fee and generally also the unit, which is almost always per household. So let's say, for example, that You bill $12 a month for solid waste. We'd like you to provide that per year, so $168 per year per household. And let's say you have a recycling fee of $4 a month, which would translate to $48 per year per household. You also have the option to provide your availability fee if you have one, or to provide everything as a total combined fee, as well as providing any yard waste fees or bulky waste pickup fees. Then we ask if you operate a pay-as-you-throw program for residential garbage. That's, for example, if you are a county and you charge residents for their waste by the bag. So then you would say yes. Then we have a contract section where we ask about the amount of your solid waste services contract or recycling contract, or if you combine those two, both for the amount and for the year and month of expiration. And then we ask about your collection program costs with this table here, which we've redone a little bit from years past to try to make it a little bit more clear. We ask about the ton or the number of households or customers served, tons collected, and more information about the collection costs for both your municipal solid waste, recycling, and yard waste programs, if you have all three of them. And we ask that you provide this information even if your materials are collected from convenience centers or from the landfill. And if you only have one total cost to show, please provide it in this collection cost column. We also have tooltips here that define what these mean a little bit more. So for collection cost, that includes expenses such as employee wages and benefits, the cost of contracted collection, equipment operations and maintenance, or annualized capital expenditures or overhead costs. And by disposal, we mean any tipping fees paid for solid waste or recycling processing fees, or any tipping fees paid for yard waste. I'll give an example here. Let's say that you're a mid-sized city with 75,000 households, and you collect about 4 million tons of solid waste. I'm sorry, I'm using real data, and you do not collect 4 million tons of solid waste. That is an example of the collection cost. But you collect about 170,000 tons of solid waste. And your disposal cost comes to about $7 million. Then the form will automatically populate that the cost per ton managed is about $65, and your cost per household is $146.67. And you have and we ask that you do that for both your recycling program and your yard waste program. And then this total section here will automatically populate. We also ask about solid waste facility budget. So your total combined budget for all solid waste and recycling services for this past fiscal year, and any individual budgets for facilities you may have, such as a landfill, yard waste facility, transfer station, or recycling facility. Next, we come to some sections that we collect for the Division of Waste Management. They're about white goods, tires, and abandoned and manufactured homes. Only counties are required to complete this section. So if you're a county, you'll see that it will skip down and ask more detailed questions. But if you're a municipality, it will actually skip you to one more question and then to the end of the form. But for now, we will pretend we're a county. This section is about white goods. It'll ask you for contact information for your white goods collection site, refrigerant removal staff, more information about the type of refrigerants removed and the amount, as well as who your refrigerant or where refrigerants may be sent for recycling or destruction. Then some information about white goods tons received, any revenue from the Department of Revenue for the white goods disposal tax proceeds, and also a little bit about your white goods expenditures. Next, if you're a county, you'll provide information about scrap tires, the address, the tons collected, the kinds of scrap tires received, any revenue received from the scrap tire disposal tax proceeds. We'll ask about your expenditures and where you send your scrap tires for disposal or processing. And lastly, we have, or not lastly, but we have a short section about management of abandoned manufactured homes. Whether you have a program for the management of abandoned manufactured homes, and if you have a written plan. And the last section before the comment section is a question about disaster preparedness. If your local government has a plan in place to manage disaster debris. If you say yes, it will ask a couple more questions about that, including contact information for who's in charge of that program and some information about any sites you may have. Or you can click no and skip to the end of the form where we have a comment section. And here we ask you to elaborate on any changes to your recycling program since last year or any unusual answers that you may have. And then you can click submit. When you do, it will process for just a minute, but then your report will be automatically sent to us and you'll receive an email confirmation that gives you the option to download or print your report. And once it finishes thinking about it, I can show you how that looks. But once you do have the option to download or print that report, that's how you can save a copy for yourself. Then my team will review each submittal and we may ask you some questions about what you sent us. And then we will make any changes on your report based on the questions that we ask. And then once that process is finished, we'll email you a copy of the final report. So it's gone through and says that yes, your report has been sent to us. And it hasn't gone through to me yet, but I'll receive an email saying that I've finished with this process, and then we'll be in touch with you shortly if necessary. So that is the end of me going through this report. Now we're going to open it up for questions, and I will stop sharing my screen.
I'm coming back. I was going to share my screen real quick. I thought it might be helpful just to show you guys how to access the report. I think that's very straightforward, but maybe it would help to just watch us click through to get here to get started. Let's see. I still see your screen.
Can you share yours now, Sandy?
Okay, let me see. Okay, I'm working on it.
We see it now.
All right. Okay. So everyone probably who's on this call is already on Carol's email list. We have 1 or 2 contacts that we email each year, prompting them to complete this report. And so hopefully when I pull this over here, you'll see Carol's email.
Yeah.
So in this email and all the reminder emails that Carol will send, she sends a link that will take you straight to the form itself. So I will click this. And it will automatically open a fresh version of the form. Here we are. And I just wanted to show you one other way you can get to this form in case you ever need to know. Some of you, probably especially counties, are doing similar online forms for permitted facility reports. And so on the Division of Waste Management's page where you access all the permitted facility reports, you can scroll down to the second table where there's a link to this local government solid waste and materials management report. And so this link will do exactly the same thing. It'll take you to start a new version of the report. And please just have a little bit of patience with our report. I think because there are so many questions, sometimes it does take just a minute to load. So this is probably a good opportunity to answer one of the questions that have come in, which is about saving a draft of the report once you've started. And so Carol kind of talked through that briefly. Maybe I'll just do it and show you what that process actually looks like, because I know with so much data to collect, sometimes it's much easier to do this in little batches. So once I start a report, and I will start one for a Husky, the most important piece of information that you'll put in, of course, you're required to put your email here. But when you ask the form to save a draft, it will ask you again for your email address. So I'm going to say this option is at the bottom of every page, save a draft. It will say, what is your email? And be very careful to type the correct email address in, because we do not have the ability to recover your draft. Nothing is submitted to us until you get through all the pages and click that submit button. So I would say double, triple check your email, because this link that comes to your email is the only way for you to recover your progress on the report. So I will create a password.
And on that note, we would also say to keep that password handy.
Yes, because that's also something that we cannot recover. So I know this is painful looking at my screen processing, but hopefully it'll give you some confidence when you're going through this process. If it takes just a minute, be patient. It's not broken, it's just thinking.
And while it's thinking, does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask? If so, you can raise your hand using that sidebar on the left.
Okay, so here I'm getting confirmation that my draft has been saved. I can click this link to keep going where I left off. And in a minute, I will also get an email with a link. And as this prompts you, if you don't see it, please do check your spam or junk folder. But I'll show you what that email looks like as soon as it does come in for me. But in the meantime, I'll just keep this. This is not where I want to be. Yeah, it is. I was going to keep the form pulled up in case we need to refer back to any questions. Okay, so let me take a look at some of the questions that have come in. We did get one which is specific to the specialty wastes. The question is for reporting motor oil. What if we pick it up curbside instead of at a site? What do we put for the number of sites? It's a good question. And I would say that I would recommend you just skip, don't put anything in the number of sites, because you don't technically have a site. And of course, you will report the pounds of motor oil that was collected. And this is a good example of an area that we would appreciate you using the comment box in Part X, just to tell us we collect motor oil curbside. We don't have any drop-off sites for that material. So here's another question that has come in. How do I get a printed copy of the questionnaire for us to use as a worksheet to collect data? That's a great question, and we figured many people would appreciate that opportunity. And so on the instructions page, we have a link down here to download a blank PDF of the report to use for gathering data. So if you click this, it will open a PDF that you can print or download. The formatting is not great. but it does have all the questions, including all the expanded questions if you were to answer yes to one of the main questions. So you can use this to gather your information and write on it. And of course, we do ask that, well, we require that when you're ready to submit your report officially, you do it using this online form. Okay, I'm trying to multitask here and read some of these questions that have come in. Let's see. So here's one which is related to the saving a draft. So it says, can the email contact and password be changed later as staff working on the report may change? Unfortunately, no. The email address that you input initially will have to be the one that you use to recover your draft of the report. But if you have, a specific circumstance like that, get in touch with us. Maybe we can work with you so that you don't lose the progress that you've made thus far.
We also have a question about fees. The question is, for the yearly fee we charge the residents, what if we charge a set rate for garbage, recycling, yard waste, and bulky waste? How should we separate? And if you charge one bundled fee, you don't need to report it separately. There's a section for the total fee at the bottom of that fees table, and you can just report everything together.
Total combined fee right here.
Yes.
Okay, here's a question, and let me just say real quick, we're getting quite a few questions coming in through the type-in box. But if you do have a question that you want to for us to unmute you, just go ahead and raise your hand, and then we'll get to those shortly. Here's a question: if we miss a section, will the form highlight missing required fields? Generally, no. We made very few questions required questions because we know that so many programs vary so much from community to community, and there may be parts that don't apply to everyone. So we didn't want to force you to answer something when it wasn't applicable. So any required questions are denoted by a red asterisk. For example, does your government provide any recycling or solid waste services? You must answer that question. You must provide an email address for the person completing the form. And you must tell us if you do provide solid waste or recycling services and get to this question, did you have a recycling program? Did you partner for a recycling program, or did you not have a recycling program? So for that reason, we ask that before you submit the form, please do, conduct a review, kind of review your answers and make sure you've answered everything that you need to. And again, as Carol mentioned, our staff review each of these reports that come in. So, and we also compare your answers this year to the report that you submitted last year. So when we notice something that's missing, we'll get in touch with you and ask you for missing information or if we need to clarify about anything.
And we have a question about C&D. The question is, we currently collect brick and concrete, but we add that tonnage in with inert debris. We also collect C&D. Do you want the tonnage for the brick and concrete in with the C&D tonnage? For that, we'd say if your C&D if that tonnage is being recovered or recycled, then we would like you to report it in the public recycling ton section. But if it's collected and going to an LCID landfill, then we're not asking that in that section about public recycling tonnage.
Here's a question to clarify. Just want to clarify that if the town collects recycling and drops it off at the county transfer station, we do not report recycling tonnage on our report, just not in Part X. Part X. Part X is the comments. So if you drop off recycling at a county transfer station, that's a tough one to answer completely yes or no. So if you traditionally in years past have reported your recycling tons, even if you take it to a county transfer station, I would say continue to report your recycling tons to us as a municipality. The kind of things we're thinking about is like if you maybe collect a little bit of cardboard and take it to the county and dump it on a tipping floor, and there's really no way to track how much cardboard came from your municipality when you're taking it to the county to be lumped into their larger cardboard recycling program. And of course, that's going to be accounted for by the county. If you're taking it to a transfer station that has scales and you get reports about how much is coming in when you bring loads, I think that makes sense for you to report your own, as a town, report your own recycling tonnage that you take to the county, because that's all tracked very clearly. But maybe get in touch with us so we can talk about your situation in particular to make sure that we're not double counting that recycling tonnage.
Then we have our county offers recycling, but not at curbside. At curbside, would they report that, and would we just say not offered? So if you're a municipality and you don't collect or contract for recycling at all, and but your county has a drop-off program and your county runs a recycling program, you would just say no, you don't have a recycling program.
So I see we have 2 hands raised. So let's see if we can allow them to ask a question. So the first hand I see raised is Bruce Woody. I'm going to attempt to unmute you, Bruce, and you may have to unmute yourself on your end too.
Hello, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was so many questions that I had, but the link, you went through the link and I was trying to follow you with the link. Now I have the homepage, Environmental Assistance and Customer Service homepage pulled up, but is there a way to get to the link from there?
Well, not a direct way, but I can show you how to get there.
This page says recycling, so I'm on the wrong page.
Yeah, so if you go to, let me see if I can remember this correct. If you go to recyclenc.org, that will take you to our recycling homepage. And from there, we have a button here for data, reports, and publications. So when I click here, we have 2 headings that are related to this solid waste and materials management annual report. The first one is a link to the big report that we prepare along with the Division of Waste Management that has all of your data analyzed and compiled and is submitted to the General Assembly each year. The second heading is about this reporting process. So there's 2 helpful links here. The first one takes you to the page with the link to all the facility reports that I had showed you. So I opened it in this new tab here. So here's where you can access all those permit facility reports, and here's where you can access our report. And the second link takes you to the page where we have the previous 5 years of every local government's report, which we highly suggest that you reference your most recent year's report as you work on your current report.
And I have that saved, but the ones you just stated prior, is there any way that you could send those links to my email and then I can bookmark them? Because I tried to put in the link you just came up with and it said not found or something, and I'm sure it's of the operator and not the teacher. So if you could do that, Sandy, I appreciate it.
Sure, we can definitely do that. And again, feel free, it's probably easiest when you get Carol's reminder email to
Yeah.
use the link in here, because then
Okay.
it's just one click. But yes, we'll send you the link to the website as well.
I appreciate it. I had a question about the finance page, if you could go there, and that'll be my last. Excuse me.
Okay.
So well, is that, no, the one that you show where it calculates itself? The one
Oh,
with,
down at the bottom.
yeah, there you go. Now, we as a county, we collect we would collect solid waste at the sites, and then we transport it to our vendor. So in your view, does that mean we collect waste in the scheme of saying it's not curbside? They bring it, they drop it off. So municipal solid waste line 1, number of household customers served. Well, everybody in the county has access to these waste recycling centers, and some of the people in the urban and rural areas of the county can contract GFL, Waste Management, Republic Services to come pick up their trash at their curbside. So my question is, under the first line, municipal solid waste, do I try to attempt to convert what we collect as municipal solid waste in this line, or do I keep it blank? That's my question.
I would suggest that the number of households or customers served is the number of households that have access to your programs. So
Eligible.
however many people, are eligible to use your convenience sites, that's the number I would put here.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the actual tons collected, we can put there.
Mm-hmm.
We can put the collection cost, the disposal cost, or whatever. So,
Yep.
Okay, that's clear for me. That's clear for
All
me.
right.
This is the section that always have me pulling out the hair from my head every year, and that's why I don't have any. But this year, hopefully, I won't have to do that.
Well, I'm sorry it's too late, but feel free to call Carol or I as you're working on this section.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we tried to provide a little bit more clarity through those, those tooltips that you can hover over with your mouse. But please feel free to get in touch as well.
Yes. We're getting close to time. I see Ashley Ward, you have your hand raised. Did you have a question you wanted to ask? Looks like you're on mute on your end.
No, ma'am. I think my internet's a little slow. I
Okay.
have my hand down.
All right. Great. Well, I do want to respect everyone's time and wrap this up in our hour. So we had a couple more questions come in. So as promised, we will make sure to get responses to you via email or by getting in touch some other way. We really appreciate everyone who has joined the call today. And one thing that Wendy actually suggested to me, and we'd like to hear your feedback about, is if you think it might be helpful to have another open Q&A session, maybe a month from now, as everyone is starting to work on the report. So if you think that's a good idea, please feel free to shoot us an email. We'd be happy to do that. And as we've said multiple times, please feel free to contact Carol or I as you're working on the report. We can talk through specifics of your community situation. We can help you understand what we're asking for on this report. We understand it's long and can be cumbersome, so we want to be there to support you however we can. So thank you all for attending. We will, like I said, be posting the recording and hope to email that by the end of this week. And we really appreciate your time today, and we appreciate all your efforts completing these reports and all the work that you're doing to manage solid waste and recycling in your communities. So have a good afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you. Talk to y'all later.